Our biblical text tonight comes to us from James chapter 3, and we're going to read verses 13 all the way to James chapter 4, verses 3, and then verses 7 and 8. And I put a few of those texts out on the table for you this evening. If you are wise and understand God's ways, prove it by living an honorable life, doing good works with humility that comes from wisdom. But if you are bitterly jealous and there is selfish ambition in your heart, don't cover up the truth with that boasting and lying. For jealousy and selfishness are not God's kind of wisdom. Surely such things are earthly, unspiritual, and demonic. For wherever there is jealousy and selfish ambition, there you will find disorder of every kind. But the wisdom from above is first of all pure. It is also peace-loving, gentle at all times, and willing to yield to others. It is full of mercy and the fruit of good deeds. It shows no favoritism and is always sincere. And those who are peacemakers will plant seeds of peace and reap a harvest of righteousness. What is causing the quarrels and fights among you? Don't they come from the evil desires at war within you? You want what you don't have, so you scheme and kill to get it. You're jealous of what others have, but you can't get it, so you fight and you wage war to take it away from them. Yet you don't have what you want because you don't ask God for it. And yet even when you ask, you don't get it because your motives are all wrong. You only want what will give you pleasure. So humble yourself before God. Resist the devil and he will flee from you. Come close to God, and God will come close to you. Wash your hands, you sinners. Purify your hearts, for your loyalty is divided between God and the world. Ooh. Not envying and being content is not something we're very good at as Americans, is it? In 2012, the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network actually started publishing the results of an annual survey on global happiness, which is called the World Happiness Report. Has anybody ever read the World Happiness Report? Every year, a new report comes out, and the question isn't which country will rank number 1 in the World's Happiness Report, but which Northern European country will. Finland has gained the honor 7 times since its inception in 2012, Denmark 3 times, Switzerland and Norway 1 time each. And these countries are always followed closely behind by Iceland, the Netherlands, and Sweden. Meanwhile, the United States has yet to crack the top 10 list. The last time we came close to this was in 2019, and we were still 19th place. But in 2024, the U.S. received its worst ranking since the report's inception in 2012. We actually were ranked in 23rd place, which is super interesting. So, and then 19th place, that was the next worst that we had ever done in 2019. Now, one of the co-authors of the report was really puzzled by the 2019 19th place. And they had an article where this researcher is saying, Americans should be happier than ever now. This is 2019. Violent crime rates are low, as is the unemployment rate. Income per capita has steadily grown over the last few decades. However, the U.S. seems to be on this downward trend. Just because the standard of living actually improves doesn't mean that happiness always follows. And this might be because the happiness report isn't quite the right word for what the report is measuring. In reality, the World Happiness Report is more about contentment than it is about that exuberant, clap your hands, right? Jump up and down, giddy joy. And that kind of happiness, that kind of contentment is something that for some reason our northern European countries seem to be really good at. So Finland, who ranked number 1 7 times, would say that much of their happiness is due to their daily habits. A short walk in the forest, going ice swimming, that would be more difficult today, and just tasting something from nature. And that might have you thinking like, really? Is that the key to happiness? Is that the key to contentment? I am just gonna go for a walk in the woods and I'm gonna pick some berries and I'm gonna do like a cold plunge. And perhaps another part of our struggle to be happy or content is that there's just something in our culture in America that has us never satisfied. Not by better living standards, not by low crime rates, because we have been trained to want more, to strive after that American dream, to trade up for the next biggest and better thing. Now, the good news is, I guess I can call it good news, that the problems we are facing as a country, as individuals, as a community, they aren't anything new. It turns out that they're not just an American problem, because the writer of James seems to be trying to convince early Christian communities with their writing that they should probably learn the same lesson of contentment that we're talking about today. That those who are truly wise, that those who are truly rich in peace are the ones who find contentment. The writer of James has been trying to help the readers discover the root issue behind those ongoing arguments, that lack of peace in their midst. To be wise and understanding didn't mean getting more stuff. Apparently, it doesn't mean padding your resume with half-baked truths you've cooked up to make yourself look better. To be wise and understanding in God's eyes means living a life whose works are done in gentleness. With living a life where you're so content that you don't feel like you have to envy the things that people have that you want or need. The wise and understanding among them were the ones who were not crushing the weaklings or the weakest individuals around them. They weren't the ones who always made sure they got their own way. No, they were the ones who walked in the shoes of the ones they disagreed with or who they didn't understand. They were the ones who were willing to lay aside the things that they were partial to when it came to what God's kingdom was about so that they could take a part in God's work in the world. So who are the wise in James? The ones who show mercy. The ones who bear good fruits, the ones who didn't show partiality. And if you've been here the last few weeks, that might sound a little bit familiar because this is kind of James winding down his letter and reminding them of everything that he has been talking about. And when he asks them, why do you argue and have conflicts? Where is all the strife from your community coming from? And I might say, where is all the strife in our world coming from? It's because you envy the things that you don't want or you don't have, and it's gotten out of control. Because you always want more and more and more, and you don't care about your neighbor's needs at all. And what's worse, when you do get more, it's never enough. And it seems to make you even more hungry for more. And so James, the writer, tells the early church communities that even their prayer life, the way that they were talking to God about their needs, had become really selfish. That it was so focused on what they wanted or desired that they had stopped thinking about other people around them and the ways that they might have a need for God to meet, or the way that God doing what they asked for might harm the other individual. It would seem that contentment was a really hard thing to find in the community James is writing to. And sometimes I think we can be the same way when we chase our own wants and our own desires without a thought to the people around us or to the world around us. It usually doesn't lead to happiness. I don't know if you've read a lot of articles when people get everything that they want and they say, it's not enough. We're all looking for contentment and it's not found in more. More just seems to leave us empty. So the more we collect and create for ourselves, the more it's all about how people think about us, the less contentment we have, and the more hunger it stirs within us, the more discontent we have in our life. Sometimes we can get so focused, right, on what we want or what we don't have that we don't even realize that we might be losing sight of the things that are good, the things that we do have, and the things that we are blessed with. Like relationships with one another, like being a part of God's work in the world. Have you ever brought someone a piece of hope? It's a beautiful thing, right? Made sure someone had what they needed for the day. Food, shelter, provided an opportunity for healing, whether that's emotional or physical. What really matters in the world, we can't buy it. We can try, and it can make a lot of our lives easier. I'm not gonna pretend like that's not true, but it won't bring us contentment. Now, let's take our Wayback Machine back just a little bit to the 2021 World Happiness Report. So that report gathered its data during the year of 2020. Okay? How do you think we did? Did we go up? Did we go down? We see hands for up? I've got a half hand. Hands for down? Friends, the United States moved to 14th place. In 2021, we even beat Canada. Canada, all right? The friendliest nation. I'm Canadian. I can throw a little shade at my family up north. Canada. And you might be thinking, Tiffany, have you lost your mind? 2020 was the worst, right? And yet, you know what happened on the worst year ever? Our country became collectively content. And I think that's wild. In the worst year ever, our country, when they looked at the data, became more collectively content. And I think it's because we gained some of that wisdom that the writer of James is talking about. All our distractions were removed. All our extracurricular activities were shut down. We had to find new and creative ways to entertain ourselves, night after night after night. Britt and I started to carry our TV outside and just watch it outdoors, just to make it a little different. And we all became more content. And at first, you might think the results of this report are a little mind-boggling, but perhaps it took a year of losing almost everything for us to see the good things that were right in front of us. Does anybody remember seeing a bit of that on Facebook or on social media? Perhaps it took a pandemic for us to find that contentment. Maybe it took a pandemic for us to stop envying what other people had and instead be thankful for what we do have. For family, for friends, for neighbors, the people who checked in on us, a roof over our head, toilet paper, a job, food. And a lot of us got back out into nature, right? So kind of think back to our friend from Finland, take a walk in the woods. And perhaps that showed us a little bit of what contentment is about. It's not about the stuff, right? It's about recognizing the things that are left, that are valuable, the people who are there for us, the things that bring us peace. Perhaps it took a pandemic to teach us how to look out for the needs of others. I never saw my church community more caring of each other than when we're in the middle of the pandemic. I mean, little old ladies are like, I'll drop off toilet paper on your front porch. People were checking in on each other, dropping off food if someone got sick. Perhaps it took a pandemic for us to show mercy to people who are in need. We actually took care of more people by sending right checks to everyone instead of just businesses, and I thought that was really beautiful. We got a chance to cultivate the fruit of the Spirit, a little more love, a little more joy, a little more peace, a little more patience, a lot of kindness, a lot of goodness, gentleness. We had to learn a little self-control, right, during the pandemic. For a split second, during one of the harder years that will go down in our country's history, we found collective contentment. We became a grateful people. And I'm not sure where the data gathered for this year will take us as a country. It kind of, quite honestly, saddens me to think about it. So in 2020, we were 14th, and the data that was collected in 2023 put us at 23rd. So I'm a little sad, I'm a little worried, but I'm also motivated, right? Because I don't have to forget the lessons that I've learned about what really matters. You don't have to forget the lessons that you've learned about what really matters. I don't want to move backwards. I want to learn how to more deeply lean into the kind of wisdom that comes from God that brings this deep contentment. Because God's wisdom, God's pathway forward, it's not just about me and what's good for me. It's also about what's good for our neighbors and what's good for our world. So I hope that you and I will continue to learn this wisdom, to cultivate it in our lives, to figure out what it means for each of us to be content on our own and collectively. Maybe consider the invitation to live a countercultural way of life that produces good fruit in our world that doesn't just benefit ourselves, and fruit that leads towards peace. Amen.
I'm not gonna like the pen.
The other one?
Can everybody hear me?
Yeah, just hold it like you're eating it. Yep.
Like I'm eating it?
Yep.
Okay. Alrighty, so how do I say that? Like in relation to what we were talking about, trying to be appreciative of what we have and what's important versus being so envious and rotten all the time. Anyways, growing up, my family was never the wealthiest. We never had the nicest house or the fanciest car, but we were always happy. We always figured out a way to be happy no matter what. But one day I was in 9th grade and I found myself being a little insecure because the kids were teasing me about not having a smartphone, and it wasn't even cool when I was in 9th grade. The phones weren't that cool yet, but not having a smartphone and not having the trendiest clothes, leggings were super in, yoga pants were super in. That was just a little bit above my head. But I was feeling down, they got to me. So when I went home, I was trying to just beeline for my bedroom. And before I could get there, my mom burst into laughter, like the loudest possible laugh, because she was laughing at my brothers being silly and just enjoying themselves. And it kind of snapped me out of the spunk that I put myself in. And in the moment of judging my mom and my brothers enjoying themselves, I realized, like, I don't need to focus on material things. I was happy just being with my family and content with our lives as they were before it had negative influence from the outside. And so it helped me realize it's about the love and the laughter we share with our families and, friends. We tend to get distracted at times, but it's important that we always find our way back to the things that bring us true happiness and fulfillment, which I think we all know what that is deep down inside. It's not what you can buy at the store.